So in this tutorial, we'll cover how to, instead of making a step model, how to actually make this model back into a smooth model. So this is a much quicker process, but it requires that your modeling is actually really good. Otherwise, this can get a little out of hand pretty quickly. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're actually just going to take this one. So for this method, you actually don't need the full profiles going around your objects. So we'll go ahead and we'll grab this one, and we're just going to make a copy of it again. And the first thing I want to do again with this one is going to be to find my bounding box. So the key for all of this, if you have a line in plan already, that's good. But if you don't, we can just do a bounding box here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a rectangle just in plan that calls out basically what the boundary of my objects are. So if we're looking at this one, you can see we've created a rectangle around this, which will give us the extents of our drawing. So once we go back into perspective, we're going to grab this and we can just move this up into space. So what this is going to do is we're basically going to run a patch, and what that'll do is it'll patch a surface across this, but it won't necessarily trim it. It's going to extend beyond the bounds of it. So what we're going to use this box for later on is to actually make this into back into a rectangle once it's done. So if we go ahead and select all of these curves, we can run a command called patch. There's things like sample point spacing, surface U, and surface V spans. We're not going to get into too much of what this means. Basically, these are all settings that can refine or make your patch looser. So these are dictating the amount of constraint that these lines are actually placing on the patch surface that you're making over this. So we'll click OK here, and we're going to see that it makes this totally wild looking surface. So you can see it comes up real crazy over here. This is what we're going to use our rectangle for. So you can see that it actually extends beyond the bounds of it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to run an extrude. And where a lot of you have been doing solid to this point, I'm going to actually tell you to turn solid off here. And then just extrude it way down through. So what this is going to be is this is literally just a trimming surface that we're going to get rid of later. So if we grab this and we just type trim, we're going to be able to trim that surface away from the outside. And then what happens when we get out of that command, we can see that now we actually have a pretty nice surface left over. So if we look now and we compare this to something like this surface, we can see that we're actually pretty close to what our original surface was. I'm going to go ahead and grab this just to show. We'll go ahead and copy this. So this is our original surface. And then this is our newly patched surface. So you see we have a dip there, we have a peak, a peak, a peak. So it does a pretty good job here with the amount of lines we have. For something like a patch, I would say you don't necessarily need to get to a super high resolution of contour lines. It needs a little bit of room to breathe in between the contour lines. So something like this is pretty appropriate. You don't need to go super crazy because the more contour lines that you put in there, the more lines it's going to actually have to map the patch to, and it's going to take a lot of time, and it's not actually going to be all that much more accurate, because basically what this is doing is it's taking a surface and it's interpolating points all the way through these curves that allow a surface to fall on those. So what we're going to do from here is we're going to actually take this rectangle again, and we're going to do an extrude. And we're going to make sure that we just take the lowest point of this and we just get a little bit below it. You can be more precise about this. So if you wanted to now do a bounding box on this, we could actually take a rectangle down here. We can take that curve and we can move it down by a specified amount. So let's say we want to go down another ½ inch, which is the increment of our actual contour lines. So we'll go ahead and delete both of these. And again, we're going to run an extrude. We'll run it up past our highest point. This time we're going to use this surface to actually do our trim, and we're going to trim that surface down. So you can see what that's done is it's actually created walls on the outside of our contour model. So if we click this and then we do a join, so we're going to join these two objects together. We see we click once and then it's totally joined, but our bottom is totally open. So we're going to grab this and we're just going to do a cap. And what a cap is going to do is that will automatically close any of our planar surfaces that are available to be closed. So what this is now is a totally solid object that's going to approximate our topography that we had in our original model. So over the course of the last two tutorials, we saw basically how we go from a model that looks like this into a model that looks like this. And then where you branch off between the two tutorials would be you have to make the rectangles and actually close them off in order to make the full geometry here. Whereas for this one, you're basically just using the geometry within, and then you're doing a couple of trims in order to close that surface off. So the last tutorial in this series will go over how we take this surface that we just made and start to incorporate something like a building into it.